So, so let's go forward to um, early last year, early 2020, and you said you and some others are getting ready to go to Wudang, to go to China, and that must have been so much expectation around that, and quite a life-changing journey. And then the virus hit, and things had to be changed. Could you describe the process that led from the realization of not going to China to the point where you were assisting Bing Shifu in setting up his online program? How did one go from one to the other across those months?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question. And so well, to be truthful, of course, I was disappointed. I was looking so much for spending a lengthy, a considerable amount of time in Wudang.
Mm.
I'd made many arrangements to do that. And so, of course, I was disappointed. But to be honest, the transition from not having a retreat in China versus creating this online school, in some way, in the spirit of it, never changed. The idea of the going to China was actually, it was driven not by, it's not like just this physical thing that happens. It's like you said, it's a journey. It's a journey of self-discovery, a spiritual journey. It's a journey of learning, and it's a journey of sharing and a journey of helping others. So you could say that this group that was gathered to go there, it was actually just an extension of really helping people, working with people, making something good happen, beautiful happen, helpful to many people. And when it didn't happen like I thought it would, then all of a sudden you think, well, there's this void and there's this very difficult time. So what are you going to do? And the only answer was to create an online existence and try that out, and to help these people who were struggling with this pandemic like everybody else, and have an experience like what we were planning. And if you can't have it on Wudang Mountain, then let's have it on the computer for anyone who has a computer. And that was the spirit of what happened. And then from there, other people kind of jumped on and joined the fun, and that's what happened. So I would say that the spirit never changed. It was just took a different form. And I think that's a really important lesson that you learn from studying a kind of a Taoist philosophy, if you will, is it could be a sort of yogic philosophy in that sense, is that things change. If there's one constant in the world, is that nothing stays constant. I mean, we say that there's ultimate truths, but the reality that we live in, the physicalness of it, is always changing every second. It never stands still. One running water never stands still. It's always moving. So it just, the same thing, just took a different shape. You could say that. It was kind of a death and birth cycle. And you just have to be open. And you know what? That's part of the thrill and beauty of it all. It's that other journey that happened.
And within a period of months, you were finding yourself not only hosting and supporting the sessions in North America, but having some very early mornings to join us in Europe and facilitate our meetings. So I imagine it's asked a lot of you to kind of support two distinct communities in different locations in the world and two different continents as part of this journey.
Well, let's make it very clear. What you're talking about is Master Bing's school, and sure, I help brainstorm, help facilitate some things, but it's his school. He's the teacher, and he's the one who does all the work. And I love coming to Europe, but just in the wintertime, I have a meditation time, and it was interrupting with that. And that's something I've done forever. And we have people who have practices like our martial arts practice that we're talking about, internal practices, meditation, those become living entities, almost part of us. And so I wasn't, so at some point, I don't think you mentioned it, but at some point I wasn't coming during this winter time to those classes because with winter I make adjustments and it was interfering with my meditation time. But yeah, and I also have my own classes that I run here too.
Yeah, I was
And
going to ask you about those. So, what's been your own experience of teaching online yourself? How was that as a transition from face-to-face teaching to teaching your students online?
well, there's nothing like being in a group and having that group energy, right?
Mm,
And when you're teaching, you can't put into words how important it is to see the students.
mm,
Everything about them from the moment they walk into the room or the space you're teaching in, how they talk, everything about them. You get so many hints about what they need today, how we need to go about things, and also and giving corrections, helping them understand the material. It's so helpful to like go up and you can say that you're blue in the face, drop your shoulders, drop your elbows. But a lot of people, if they're not used to doing that, they don't get it. You have to, with their permission, actually physically make an adjustment or just demonstrate to them over and over again and say, oh, okay, that's right. And the problem with teaching online is yeah, some people you can see okay, or you can stop and observe certain people, but for the most part, you don't have the same view. You don't get to see everybody. You don't have that same feeling, all that you can't pick up on as many signals when you're teaching. So you can't, in some ways, you can't help people as much. On the other hand, there are advantages to teaching online. Well, you can record your teachings and make it available for people, and people love that. I find that
mm.
that's really helpful for students to have these recordings. I never even thought of it. I'm not really too excited about seeing myself on screen, like even in this interview here, but I find I'm happy to do it if it helps students. And also here, you can see my hands. I can come up close to the camera. I
Mm.
can demonstrate things very clearly. I can move in different angles and show details that in a class, especially if you're facing the other direction, they can see only the back of you, which a lot of times that's how we teach. And there's a lot of nuances that are missed. There's people in the back rows. If you're teaching people in rows, and the people in front can see, but the people in back miss things. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of disadvantages, but the other advantage is people from all over the world can come and join classes. Like we've been talking about Master Bing's classes. People from all over the world come. People, I've had people too come from all over North America, and join classes. And so it's just a very different way to communicate. And in some ways it's really fun and exciting because it opens up so many possibilities. In some ways you can communicate better with students, and students can communicate too better. But the quiet students, like any time, any mode of teaching, you always have to make sure that you're, if you can, tuning into everybody, making sure everyone gets what they need. And that's the part that's always tricky, is that when they're not in front of you, that are you taking enough time to check their movements, to check in with them? Is everyone asking questions that needs to? Is everyone being heard? So this is some of the more challenges. And space, of course, weapon training is very hard in a small space. So you have to come up with all kinds of ingenious ways of not destroying the space which you live in, right, or you
yeah,
practice in. So you have a small space. But anyway, just some thoughts.
yeah. And if people were interested in connecting with your community in Minnesota, but virtually, then where should they head to find out more about the classes you offer?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Well, first of all, I say always learn from the best. So if you want to learn Wudang martial arts, first I recommend you go and learn from Master Bing. He's wonderful. If you want to learn Shaolin arts, my Shaolin teacher, Sifu Voss, is great here. But I do have a wonderful group, and you're welcome to come. And it's at healingartsminnesota.com. So it's Nikki at healingartsmn.com.
Great.
And they can email me, and I'm happy to discuss anything about any of these arts. They're a
Thank you.
passion I love, and they always will
And
be.
yeah, the link will be floating below us right now.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
And I guess the wonderful thing about, this strange world we're living now is that people from outside Minnesota or even the United States can potentially connect with your community in this virtual space, right?
Right, which brings me to another point, Giles. It would be really fun to connect our communities sometimes, just as, brother sister kind of
Yeah,
groups of practitioners, just for the fun of it.
love
And
that.
I really hope that we can, as a martial art community, Wudang community, and martial arts in general, that we can become more connected.
I'd love that. I think it's one of the possibilities of strengthening the interconnections within the global Wudang community. I think is really there right now, and that's a wonderful invitation. I have one last question, and um, I've had some students who've had COVID and have been on a process of recovery from that. And I was wondering if you have students who either through COVID or other health conditions have maybe kind of been derailed from their initial trajectory of training and are in a difficult place and struggling to find the stepping stones forward in their training. What would your perspective be on supporting students, and maybe with your TCM knowledge, with your experience of teaching, how would you guide someone who's in a difficult place, be it physically or psychologically, and guide them forwards?
That's a great question, Giles. And I say that for people in these times who don't even have not contracted it, but I do know, unfortunately, I do know numerous people. And well, the first thing is, being there and giving them hope. And, I feel like some internal practices sometimes can be very helpful, but most of all, depending on what's going on with the person, they need to get, the proper care that they need and take care of themselves and rest. And I think one of the most important things is to realize you just self-care, slowing down, taking care of yourself, and realizing that if you have a Tai Chi practice, maybe some of these Qigong practices. I heard you mention Badwa Jin, 8 pieces of brocade. It's helpful for your students. And they found that helpful. Find any Qigong movements like 8 pieces of brocade or 5 animal Qigong, these very balanced, very safe kind of Qigong practices, they're wonderful and can be very helpful. And for sure, once the student is, strong enough, feels ready, then these practices have been used for thousands of years to help people, and certainly in China have a long history of healing. And again, those very balanced ones, 5 animal, 8 pieces of brocade, these kinds of ones are just really wonderful, and would I, of course, recommend that. The most important thing is I find it just keeping in touch with the students. So when we're talking about student-teacher relationships, I try to keep in touch with the students, and so that they don't give up hope. And every little bit of light and encouragement is helpful for them. And being there for them, offering them some personal help, online help, if they need it. All these kinds of things, I do not think we can underestimate the value of them. And this is the most important thing. It's hard to recommend one thing for everybody, because everyone's condition is very different, and I can't, if you have a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner that you see normally, go see them for acupuncture and herbs. Of course, that can be very helpful, but we're talking about, just general things like Qigong and Tai Chi, these kinds of things. I think the Qigong practices can be very helpful for, they've been used in China, and they're starting to be used across the world for preventive measures right now, being used in hospitals. And I think we're going to see more and more of that in the future, this integration of these practices. You and I know we've been practicing them for some time and have had some involvement in medical communities. So we've seen what they can do. So you know, the most important thing is, you know, you take your students one by one, and you don't let them lose hope. You work with
Yeah,
them and help them. I don't know if that was helpful for you.
that's great. Yeah, and that's really useful, really comprehensive and really thoughtful. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time, Nikki, and sharing your thoughts and your experiences today. Thank you. 谢谢。
Yeah, 谢谢. Thank you, guys.